But it's interesting talking about hotels now. They're, instead of kind of lobbying and kind of treating short-term rentals as a competitor, they're now starting to pretty much adapt it. So you've got Homes and Villas by Marriott, where they're basically partnering and renting out STRs. Welcome back to the STR Intel podcast. My name is Philip Wilburn, and I'm here with Mr. Killian Gordon, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Killian, how's it going?
Happy Wednesday, Phil. Glad to be joining you here from Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm very excited to talk about what we have to talk about today. I think that the last couple months in the industry have seen a lot of changes, a lot of negative articles, and not all of it is necessarily rooted in fact. And I also think that there's kind of a bright future ahead of us despite some of these challenges. So just excited for this topic today.
Yeah, well, let's kind of dive into it. Let's talk a little bit about kind of where the STR industry, where we see it kind of now, and then just briefly some of the effects that we've seen from COVID, and then we can dive into a ton of topics of the new technologies. How is AI, the new buzzword? How is AI affecting this industry and the technologies within it, and even how we've both kind of seen it used? What's something you've seen kind of recently over the past year or two that's been a major impactor kind of to the industry, or a huge change that you've seen?
I think that there has been a lot of focus on custom built vacation rentals, not like a custom built home, but a home essentially built from the ground up, specifically to be a short-term rental, whether that is literally being built from the ground up to be a vacation rental, or it's being gutted and remodeled to specifically fit the needs of vacation rentals. I think that's an interesting path. It's not necessarily new, but I think you're seeing more and more of it. And I also believe we're seeing a lot of development around what you kind of call guest experience, guest services to the guest during, and after the booking process, not necessarily the check-in process, but that experiences, services, and technology to help with that point of the entire guest experience. Was that a little vague? Are you kind of following me
No,
there?
no, that makes. I mean, do you think the custom homes, is that does that have a lot to do with kind of Airbnb's their whole pitch for like the custom experience type thing? I mean, I know I've seen a ton of like TLC, a bunch of shows on that where people are flipping houses and building these
Yeah,
custom, like I think I saw like a Harry Potter themed
yeah.
home. Yeah, these specific theme homes. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
A little bit, yes. And also just homes that have really nice layouts to be vacation rentals, where maybe their bedroom bathroom ratio is 1 to 1, or every bedroom has an attached bathroom. The common areas are really well designed and set up to be for vacation rentals.
Right.
Some of the parking, check-in, furniture, all of this is specifically geared from start to finish to be a vacation rental, as opposed to a property that is just turned into a vacation rental.
Yeah.
Your standard residential property, maybe the numbers look good on it, and then you're just going to do some of the furniture to get it ready to be a vacation rental, as opposed to every aspect of it, from the kitchen, the bedrooms, the entrance, the backyard, the
Right.
fencing. Everything is geared specifically for that short-term rental. And then on top of that, you even further niche theme designs of those homes: Star Wars, Disney, Barbie, whatever it may be, retro arcade. I don't know. I think maybe I'm a little hesitant to speak on that. I think in the right market, those are probably extremely high performing homes. I don't know if that niche of a target demographic is always the best idea,
Sure.
unless, like, let's say it's a Disney themed home by Disneyland,
Right.
where you have a huge draw to that type of niche type of home. But yeah, just generally custom built homes. Whereas in the past, we've seen people buy up residential homes, turn them into vacation rentals, and now you're starting to see more renovations to get them to be short-term rentals, or builds to be specifically for short-term rentals.
I'm curious if there's a return on that. Are these like custom builders that build these specifically short-term rental model homes that design these, or is this just something like a special request to someone that wants a builder to build this type thing? Yeah, I'm curious of the return on those, if it's actually worth
Yeah.
it. And there may not be enough like long-term, like this may just be something new that there's not enough data yet.
It definitely, in my opinion, it definitely seems to follow the category of like a boutique hotel, more than a standard vacation rental. But I mean, overall, we're kind of just circling the rim around the idea of the step up and the professionalization of the vacation rental market. We talked about this like 2 years ago. Hey, we're seeing these changes. Things are starting to happen we haven't seen in the past. And I think it all kind of circles that conversation of people are taking the extra step, and the market is requiring people to take the extra step to have a vacation rental compete in historically, slightly oversaturated market.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this before, I think on another podcast, but just a couple of years ago, here in this market, there were first page listings on Airbnb that had unmade beds. It was just a mattress and, the professional photography and all these things. And now all these things are kind of just the benchmarks that we're seeing. And yeah, like you're talking about, the advent of all these new technologies, or it's a custom design home, are meant to fit kind of the new standard and take it another step.
And I think you talk about a time when some homes required you bring your own sheets. I like to have this conversation in a wider context. It's, hey, we used to be booking these vacation rentals and these properties out of the back of magazines. If you wanted to target a guest, you had to figure out where do your guests travel from for your market. Now, you're still having to do that, but it's significantly easier to do, and it's all readily available. But there was a time where you had to take out ads and buy ads in local prints in the market that most of your guests came from. And since then, we have seen this evolve so much that some people consider the booking platforms to be the management companies, and the booking platforms have come in here and added this whole additional spin to what a vacation rental is and what expectations are getting set for the guest when they go to book these properties. And so I always like to back it up and say, hey, we started in the back of magazines. We started with print ads. We had the advent of some of your OTAs, Verbo, and then you had Airbnb bring in the urbanization of vacation rentals. So now we're seeing an atmosphere where there's vacation rentals essentially everywhere that you could want to travel: urban, non-urban, destination, non-destination, remote, non-remote.
So you've got like the last 5-10 years. I mean, VRBO has been around for 20, 30 plus years,
Yeah.
in like destination beach and ski type towns. But now the last 10, 15 years, Airbnb comes along, they urbanize it. Now it's much easier for individual hosts to book out their homes, and Airbnb has sent enough guests to those homes. And now you've got, now you've got property managers popping up. I guess that was probably the biggest challenge after Airbnb came around. They're selling individual, well, I think they started with air mattresses, but they're selling individual shared spaces, rooms, things like that. But the challenge there was individuals didn't have the ability to manage their whole home, rent out their whole home. Now you got property managers, you've got the advent of new technologies coming up that allow even individuals to host their own home and manage their own home. And you're saying that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, we're at a point where the accessibility and the tools to help manage a vacation rental are much more easily accessible, and the discussions around managing an Airbnb definitely paint maybe not the most updated scenario of this industry. Um, the guest expectation has significantly increased. The homeowner's expectation has significantly increased. And that puts the responsibility on the property management group to elevate and exceed the services that they provide. So you used to have an environment where you could take a property as an individual, and you could spend little time hosting that property, maybe get your cleaner, you're running most of your functions out of Airbnb, and it was relatively sustainable. And that, if I recall, averaged, 8 to 15 hours a week was the average of self-managing your property. We've seen a lot of technology come into the space to help that, and it has reduced some of that time doing mundane tasks. But new challenges has popped up, and you see groups like Booking.com advertise uh, every accommodation on their website. So you have your hotel sitting right next to your vacation rental. And so your type of traveler looking at those two options also comes with more expectations. And so those challenges are going to slide down to the owner and the property management company. And so, yes, technology in some respects has made it easier, but in some respects, it's made it more complicated because now you're having to jump through hoops to meet new needs that come up as vacation rentals kind of normalize into one of your couple options for travel accommodations, as opposed to the hottest or newest travel accommodation that's kind of the buzz.
Right. And yeah, we had talked about there's two different uses for both, and that may be dependent on the market or even the seasonality needs of that, whether you use a hotel or a short-term rental. It's kind of, yeah, the expectation increase from guests. A lot of that's been driven by, you know, traditional hotel guests, your elite Bonvoy members coming from Marriott, trying it out and having those same expectations of a short-term rental. You've got individual hosts and property management companies that are increasing the overall expectations by upping their game. Now they've got professionally laundered sheets, they've got professional photographers, they've got professional cleaners, they've got everything kind of nailed down, and they're upping the game. So all these things are just basically they're just driving more competition with an individual homeowner. And then also the ease of use is just driving more supply on the market. So you've got a huge increase in supply. You've still got some people that are trying out STRs for the first time. I mean, there's still that traffic happening, but overall, what we've seen over the past probably 2 years is kind of an inflection point on supply and demand, where, you know, for the majority that I've seen, especially for this market, but I think nationally and even probably internationally, is the majority of the market for a long time has had a surplus of supply. Even here in this market, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, we had people coming from hotels during major events that, hey, the hotels are booked out, and they're coming to us. And even times we've had guests coming to us where we didn't have any supply for them. And now you've seen that huge inflection point, which I think was, especially for this market, I think July of last year, where those flip-flopped, where demand is outseated, or supply is exceeded demand. And now I think now it's kind of tapered off. I think it's kind of plateaued out. And now people are seeing, with, you know, interest rates 6-7%, you know, marking listings are at pretty much still an all-time high in the housing market. It's a lot harder to buy a house and get the same deal, and still have kind of the same profit margins from that and compete with the oversupply in the market.
Absolutely. I think another interesting side of it is the disintegration of this, being able to distinguish the difference between hotel traveler and a vacation rental traveler, a large driver, a large force in our industry that drives public perception awareness is the booking platforms, booking.com, Airbnb, VRBO. They have a very big megaphone, and what they're doing drives guest perception a lot. And you're starting to see Hyatt, Marriott, and I say starting to, it's been like a year and a half, 2 years that, push very, very heavily to get vacation rentals next to their hotels. And you're seemingly starting to see that there's no longer these groups of travelers. I travel in hotels, I travel in both, or I only travel in vacation rentals. You're seeing it a little bit more towards the nature of that visit. With all hotel lines open again and none of the factors really of COVID shutting us down or affecting travel anymore, all of those other options are available. And it really kind of seems as if it revolves more around the nature of the guest visit, more so than like, hey, we want to capture more hotel people and bring them into vacation rentals. It's now kind of one group, and that's just a traveler, and the ability to put the right accommodation in front of them for their specific type of travel in that moment.
Yeah. If I'm traveling with my family, my wife, my kids, I got 3 kids, and I'm also traveling with, let's say, my brother, his wife, and kids, and we have our whole family, and we pick a hotel, and we're staying for a week, maybe more, and I got kids running up and down the hallway, the hotel room, and I got this little tiny space with maybe two queen beds and a pull out or something like that. It may not be the best situation versus maybe like a 5-bedroom home. We can all stay there. We can save money. We don't have to eat out every time, so we can, cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The kids have their own individual rooms. They have their own kind of spaces. So do the adults. So yeah, there's different situations and different markets for both, and they're both needed. Versus, if I'm traveling on a business trip for 2 days, and it's just me, a hotel may work perfectly. I just need a bed to sleep in, and I'm fine eating out for those 2 days. Yeah, and there's 2 different situations.
Back in 2022, if you listed a home and you did relatively well, you were probably going to get that home filled up, right? You had a large surplus of travelers. You fast forward a little bit, and the goal back then, 2022, is like, hey, these guests are going to come if the home is available. Travel is really high right now. And the goal at that moment of time was, we have these external factors that are pushing tons of guests into the vacation rental for the first time Airbnb users, vacation rental users. And the goal at that moment of time was, hey, once a first time vacation rental user books and stays in a property, how do you create such a good experience that they become a frequent vacation rental user again? And I think that in some respects, we've kind of hit that tipping point. And I say that because the booking.com advertisement I recently watched, where they don't have advertisements for any one group of accommodation.
Right.
They have them all next to each other, and their slogan is basically, we're looking for whatever, niche hotel, beachfront property, urban property, doesn't matter. The fact that they're kind of doing that tells me a little bit that we may have hit that point where we've had a lot of commotion in this industry in a very positive way in the last 2 years. But with all the good times, there's going to come a little bit of a slowdown or a correction. And I think we've kind of hit that inflection point where, hey, all these new people are jumping into the vacation rental travel industry because hotels weren't available. Mm-hmm. We've captured or introduced a large majority of those people to vacation rentals. And we did see the amount of users go up. But then, of course, we also saw the amount of supply go up in that market. And so I just think it's a more of kind of just a thought or a point to observe. But I kind of feel as if we've hit an inflection point in a lot of different places in this market. With the guests, with the expectations of the guests, what the booking platforms are doing, and what property managers are needing to do. And Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm at a house today called Thunderbird. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, 2-story, pet friendly. It's got a hot tub. It's probably 8 minutes from the Air Force Academy. And it's got, as you can see behind me, pool table, dartboard, shuffleboard. What else is in here? Foosball table. It's got everything. All the activities. Great place to have family, or if you've your son or daughter at the Air Force Academy, come travel. Stay here, and again, you're right beside the Air Force Academy. It's a great spot. Yeah, it's kind of a maturing of the industry in a way where it's kind of just been this big sexy thing, and there's a ton of hype around it. Now it's kind of just maturing. Now it's the majority of people know about it now. I mean, I still talk to people that don't know they can rent out their house on Airbnb. They still know it's a thing. But yeah, I think even with COVID kind of fast forwarded that, whereas people that would normally travel and stay in hotels were pretty much forced to try this option out. And a lot of them maybe adapted to it and are using it primarily, or even, for different occasions, custom occasions. But it's interesting talking about hotels now. They're, instead of kind of lobbying and kind of treating short-term rentals as a competitor, they're now starting to pretty much adapt it. So you've got Homes and Villas by Marriott, where they're basically partnering and renting out STRs. In the same way, you've got Booking.com that has pretty much any kind of accommodation on their plate. And I think Hyatt, yeah, and even like with the corporate rental spaces, you've got Marriott, was it Residence Inn, who they do 30 or longer day stay. So you've got the hotels now starting kind of to adapt to the industry. Or what was that commercial? Was it Marriott, or was it Hilton? I think it was Hilton. They did like the Nightmare Airbnb experience commercial. So
Absolutely.
Did you see that one? There was like a chalkboard on the wall, and there's like it looks like a haunted house or something, but there's a chalkboard on the wall with like with a ton of reviews. I think it said like no sandwiches or something, which that's terrible. And then sorry, go ahead.
It's just an example of this industry maturing. Like you pointed out, these organizations were preying on the lack of professionalism in this area. Not only were hotel chains preying on it, but municipalities. A lot of these ordinances, rules, issues stem from lack of oversight and professionalism in the industry, and anyone who's not willing to adapt and play ball now is going to go to the wayside.
With the Airbnb coming around, urbanizing it, it made it a lot easier for people to do it and pretty much anywhere they wanted. And cities and states and governments had to find a way to regulate this new thing that just popped up and had so many different effects.
Let me share this story with you. I think it is relevant. So, 2019, 18, when we were putting projections together for potential owners, the conversation really was around three things. Like, of course, it's like, are we going to use your company as the property management company? But it was really, I'm looking for help to decide on if a vacation rental for my property is the right move for me. I'm considering long-term rental. I've heard about what vacation rentals are. And then I also have or know people that maybe do 6 months, 3 months, back before midterm rentals was like kind of a common term. And the conversation was, hey, this is what it could do as a long-term. This is what it could probably do as a vacation rental. And this is what it could probably do as a corporate rental, midterm rental. The vacation rental numbers weren't always astronomically higher than the long-term rental number. And that conversation may be, well, hey, here's some of the perks of doing a vacation rental over a long-term rental. Here's the attention to the home. Here's the pros and cons. It looks like it's a good fit for you. Let's do vacation rental. And you're going to be making 10, 12, 13% cash on cash return, which at the time would get any real estate investor basically to get out of their seat. That's a pretty good return in real estate. Fast forward a year, 2 years, and we go to open our branch in the Scottsdale, Phoenix market, I'm getting requests to find people properties that return 25, 30% cash on cash. And to sustain those cash flows through an entire 12-month period. And I would say, where are you getting these expectations? Where is that coming from? And it's just so out of line what we've seen historically, and we're returning to that. We're now returning to a time where we're going to see fewer get rich videos from Airbnb on YouTube.
Your
and
rental arbitrage
yeah,
models.
something else is going to replace that, and real estate investors are going to have to look at this again as one of the three tools in the toolbox of owning and maintaining an asset. And also in those last 2 years, tons of advancements in technology have come to help out, but it is a correction, and it's people need to readjust kind of their thinking around this area.
Yeah, that's a good point. Man, 25% cash on cash return, huh? That's crazy.
But people had seen it. You know what I mean?
But was
areas.
that just from like the last 2 years since?
Exactly.
Yeah, 2021, 2022 were
exactly
record performing years for the majority of the markets here, at least in the States.
I would say everyone's kind of got their own standard of what a good investment might look like and how they stack that up. I mean, across the board, it's relatively the same. But, if you're doing 20, you're doing really good. If you're doing 15, you're doing good. If you're doing 10, 12, you're beating most markets. And traditionally, before we saw some of the things that happened the last couple of years, the benchmark was to, of course, be profitable. But the real goal was to be able to own and maintain a asset that's going to improve in value over time.
And then you've got the options. If something happens to the short-term rental market, then you can look at corporate rentals. You can look at long terms. But let's say what if you're just breaking even with your short-term rental? Does that still have advantages to, let's say, a long-term rental?
I would argue till I was blue in the face that it does. But it comes down to the individual person, of course. With long-term rentals, they've been around forever. Obviously, they're your steady workhorse. They're more or less very predictable, and very familiar. With that, though, comes a lot of legalities, a lot of potential issues with not being able to have visibility into your home. In most cases, your damage waiver would not even cover the cost of your flooring if the incident happened where you did have to replace it.
Oh, you mean like the deposit?
Yeah, the security deposit for a
yeah.
long-term rental. You have little oversight on your home, and it all comes down to, is your tenant going to be a good tenant for a year's worth of time? And that is, you got someone who's like, why screen my tenant's very good? Sure, that's wonderful. It might be working for you, but the numbers always don't play out eventually over time for someone who is doing a long-term rental. Eventually they find themselves in a situation that's very sticky, tough to deal with. It is true that there can be more wear and tear on long-term rentals, short-term rentals. But with that comes many, many more safeguards and quality assurance checks to help keep that property up to date. It also allows a little bit of access to your property as a homeowner. It's a vacation rental, and you should stay in your home occasionally. We strongly encourage it because sometimes it's good to stay in your own home and get a feel for what the guests are feeling. But speaking about our service specifically, we're doing a $2,500 guest damage waiver that is extended to every guest booking the property. In most cases, $2,500 damage waiver exceeds what a long-term tenant would be paying for a 1-year stay. Right. So now this isn't necessarily maybe every company, but one of the things we've seen professionalize over the couple of years is security deposits in this industry. you can't charge or put a hold on someone's card for $2,500 when they're staying for 3 days and they're traveling. That really can tie up someone's financial situation. It affected bookings. Hotels don't do it, causing issues. So we as industry had to adapt, and we rolled out a $2,500 guest damage waiver. Now we have $2,500 to extend to that guest for one stay, for 1 day, for 2 days, for 3 days, for 4 days, all of which are significantly shorter than 1 year for roughly the same amount of money. Not to mention the professionalism of the cleaners. We were going to get to this, but one of those things that's been professionalized is cleaning. There's no cleaning teams. There's no neighbor that comes over and cleans. There's no nephew or cousin or brother who helps me clean my vacation rental. These groups are professional. These groups are professional housekeeping teams with hospitality training. And only really a trained eye is going to come in and see the difference between a professional hospitality clean and just your $75 clean you ordered off some app to come in a pinch, or because you didn't have the 15 hours a week that week to take care of vacation rentals. So it's not even necessarily that guests are noticing how these sheets are folded, how these homes are stocked, how the lighting is when they walk on, where the thermostat is where they walk in. But it's almost to be expected now, and it just comes with this elevation of every aspect of this industry.
That's a lot of good points. Well, let's talk about. So you talked about kind of the cleaner. So we've seen like traditional companies that maybe do residential cleans, which is completely different, and then you also have people that typically were cleaning hotels, which is probably more similar. But now comparing, hotel clean of that room where every single room is standardized, you got the same lamp, same bed, everything's exactly the same. Now you've got this huge inventory of houses that are all completely different. They're different build, different design, different furniture. Everything's completely different. But even with the guest standard increasing and elevating, we've seen an adaptation of those kind of companies now either adapting or forming as a result of the demand for the industry. Yeah.
While you're saying that, I kind of had a random thought. Airbnb.com gave the impression to many, many people that they could have a vacation rental or a hotel, their version of that, their version of a vacation rental, their version of a hotel, right? They could take a home and they could do what they want with it. I think that approach was wonderful and worked for a lot of people, but it completely neglects this other side of things, which is professional hospitality. What you as an owner may want your property to be is not what the majority of other people want their property to be. And so Airbnb does allow you to like design and create what you would like your perfect little stay to be. And historically that may have worked, but I definitely believe those days are gone. You may have a little cabin in the woods and you bought it because you want to go out there and not have internet and not watch TV and you want to go fishing. But there's 100,000 people out there that want to get out and get remote. They want to go fishing, but they also are paying to stay there and they expect internet and they expect some form of television. And so we have to really peel people's minds away from, I want my vacation rental set up like this, versus what reality is and what people are now expecting to get when that same home sits right next to a Marriott property, right next to a Hyatt property, right next to you name your hotel chain, who has standardized everything, provides high speed internet, provides X, Y, and Z.
All right. So we've talked about a lot of the changes and like guest expectations increasing, coming from hotels and just having much higher expectations. Owner and individual investors and their expectations on returns, and the increased supply and kind of plateau of demand. But what are some solutions for these things we've talked about?
Well, I'll start with some of your non-sexy, non-tech ones because it's just fundamental 101. Um, let's start in the kitchen. When you're setting up your vacation rental, we're not made of money. No one's made of money. You, as a investor, probably papered out numbers, including some of the setup, some of the furniture, some of the design. And now you're ready to roll, and you're getting your home set up, and a lot of things that you didn't necessarily consider start to come up, and they may add an extra 200, 300, $400,000 onto that list of things you wanted. A lot of those items come up in the kitchen, the bedrooms, and safety related. When you walk into a hotel, every single piece of furniture flows. It is set up with symmetry in mind. It's set up with neutrality in mind, um, and they are in pairs and sets. There is no three different bar stools. There's not three different sets of glasses. So I would strongly suggest to everyone to start in their kitchen, and I would standardize everything in that kitchen. Not because it not only does it look very nice, but it also is going to help you with your replacements of those items. It's going to help with your inventory of those items. It's going to simplify that. One less thing to think about. You can keep extras stocked on the property with your property manager, whatever it is. So go through your kitchen. Do your pots and pans match? Do your forks and silverware match? Is your knife set complete? Would you be satisfied with it at your own property? Are your cups matching? Are your coffee cups matching? No, I don't mean that you can't have some fun coffee cups. Everyone loves a fun coffee cup. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you've got 3 plates from Goodwill, another set that you bought new, and then some that you just had, you probably should reconsider that. And you should think of it as, hey, do I want a professional appearance, or do I want, whatever you want to call it?
But
Then I
Killian,
would,
but Killian, this custom lamp that my great great grandma brought over from the Titanic. What about this? Why can't I leave that in the home? What's wrong with that?
it's beautiful. Your grandma was the emerald of the ocean. I would just recommend you take it out of that property, you take a picture of it, and you hang it up in the property.
Because
But that's sentimental.
what's the reality? Talking about standardizing all these things, the reality is it's probably going to get broken at some point and need replaced, and that's just kind of part of it. And that's the same. That's
Absolutely.
exactly the same way hotels do it. Those glasses they put in there, they buy them in bulk, and they put them in there because they know a guest is going to accidentally drop it and break it or chip it. Something's going to happen, and the reality is they're going to have to replace it at some point. And the convenience and cost of replacing, of course, we're not saying go out and buy a bunch of cheap stuff. It's just whatever you're buying, buy something moderately priced that scales with the value and kind of the design of the home, and standardize everything. And
Standard.
don't get those terrible. What are those pans that are like they have that scratch resistant that isn't really scratch resistant? Is it Teflon or something?
It's
Those never
Teflon.
last, and I think
Yeah.
it's pretty bad for you.
Call it nitpicking, but when you're sitting and looking at your monthly statement, and you're coming up with ways to improve your home, look at your bedside lamps. Do you have grandma's lamp on the left and your new modern lamp on the right, and it looks unprofessionally set up? And you got to look at this. So symmetry, the human eye is all about symmetry, and so you want things to match. And most importantly, is it's not a game of I'll get it later. We're not in that game. When something is gotten later, the train has already derailed. And so it is very, very important to solidify and finalize your vacation rental prior to that property going live, because then those pictures are going to be taken. And so if you went and did add new changes, maybe that is for the better of the property. You have people booked under different expectations with different pictures, and vice versa. If you're taking things out of the property and the reshots aren't being done, you're setting bad expectations for the guest again. we don't want to wait for the guest to request something. We want that in the property already. That's hospitality. Anticipating what someone needs and taking care of it before that request comes through. So, like, for example, working with Hosty, we have a setup checklist that is debatably over the top, but it's all backed from guest data, guest requests, guest complaints, guest issues, uh, private suggestions, both in positive and negative light. But there's a reason these lists exist, because it is for the success of the guest, which is ultimately yours and your management company's success. So understanding that when you go to set up a vacation rental, you hit budget constraints, but every dollar you spend before those pictures get taken is probably going to be an extra dollar in your pocket down the road.
Yeah, like if you're waiting to, you're going to list your home and you're waiting to buy an AC until, the springtime before summer comes. Well, then, like you said, the train derailment is going to be all the guests that stay in your home from that time forward and leave bad reviews. And at that point, it's almost like starting over, but that's going to affect your bottom line. That's going to affect the revenue you generated for that next year, even when you get AC in. So some of these things are just expectations and really just requirements by guest. If you've got a 20-year-old mattress that you've been sleeping on and you're expecting guests to come and sleep in that mattress and be comfortable, it's like, it's probably not going to happen. And if you're waiting to replace that mattress until you've generated enough income to buy it, well, again, you're hurting your bottom line in the long run, because guests are going to leave a bad review, and that is going to impact your overall bookings.
Absolutely. So suggestions here. Obviously, endless amounts of information on the internet, some of which I'd agree with, some of which I wouldn't agree with. Those lists that include baby equipment, bunk beds, high chairs, I would leave that to a professional company who handles that and has liability safeguards in place
Don't do
for
bunk
those
beds.
additional guest mentioned.
Don't do bunk
But
beds.
no bunk beds, folks. The solution, though, is when you begin going down this route, establish and find your relationship with your property management company sooner than later. Don't go set up your home and then go play hardball and shop property management companies, expecting those property management companies to bow to your expectation of what a vacation rental is. There may not be anything wrong with that. And we get a lot of owners that come to us with the home set up and they did a phenomenal job, a few tweaks, and we're off to the races. But start building that relationship with your property management company earlier, because they're going to have a lot of resources for you. And you're going to hear things that are going to challenge your idea of how vacation rentals should be set up, because you're talking to folks who've got a lot of experience and have seen it gone bad and have seen it gone really well. So establish that relationship early. There's a lot of quality lists online. There's actually companies specifically set up to send you packages with all the required kitchen items, etc. Shameless plug to a company out there called Showplace. They do a great job. And then we hand out free safety checklists for your vacation rental, and we hand out free setup checklists for your vacation rental. So those resources are available. Definitely take a look at them. Reach out to us.
Awesome. That's a great point. Okay, we've talked about some
yes.
of the kitchen, some kind of the furnishing, getting the house set up and ready. What are some other changes, not just in standards, but let's talk a little bit about kind of technology, how technology has developed over the last. I mean, I'd say there's been major impactors even the last 5 years.
Yes.
Well, you've got AI going. Everyone's talking about AI these days.
Yeah.
But even just from like smart tools and things like that at a home, smart technology like the locks. Before, what we saw with a lot of locks was they were smart locks, or they had the capabilities, but there was no software to actually manage them. So essentially they were just a normal lock with manual codes you could put on. So that seems like it's pretty standardized within the industry. Everyone's pretty much using some kind of smart lock with the technology to be able to control that, to automate the changing of codes for individual guests, being able to track and have a log of people coming in and out of a house. That seems like it's pretty much standardized now. I don't talk to too many people now using the lockbox or any type of key situation. I do see a lot of people still doing the just using a manual lock, just going and changing the code, which seems pretty laborious. But what are some other things? You've got thermostats now, that smart thermostats where you can set those up. You can regulate and save a ton of money on your energy bills. I know you've had some things down there in Arizona with kind of the summer AC running and very high bills. I know a lot of, I think it was California and Arizona just raised cost of energy has gone up. So those bills are increasing. And that's always a challenging one too, because it's like, I've got my guests, they're regulating it however they want. They're setting it to 65 and just leaving it. They're checking out, and then are the cleaners coming in? Are the cleaners adjusting that? You got maintenance coming out. Are they adjusting those things? But now you've got smart technology. You've got thermostats. Now you can regulate that. You can set a range of the temperatures. You can set schedules. Hey, this particular time, if you don't see any motion for this amount of time, then cut to this or turn off. What else are there?
I mean, the list is endless. I mean, you could everything from water monitors in your property,
Leak
smoke,
detection.
noise. Yes, I for better or for worse, I am only starting to come around to warming up to some of the additional technologies in the vacation rental around the smart home systems. Historically, I kind of looked at it as software and technology that was useful in other areas of life, and it was being reverse engineered to try to fit into vacation rentals. And the software didn't really line up with the hardware, and the hardware didn't really line up with the software, and who is going to control it, who is going to oversee it, how's their quality assurance.
You've got
right, it opens this can of worms. Like
you've got all these individual systems. Maybe the hardware and software are there, but now you've got each one of these individual systems that you have to track and monitor too, which is like a brand new challenge out of automation.
So I do believe in the last year or so, a lot of these have transformed to being more like buzzwords, marketing tools to acquire more owners in the vacation rental space, or just ways to comfort an owner who was unsure about vacation rentals. Like we can have, and it kind of added, in some cases, more challenges than user ease, or even more challenges to the guest, and didn't result in a better guest experience. But I do think that has caught up a lot in the last year, 2 years, where we finally seen either people write completely new software to bridge these gaps, or to, I'm not a tech guy, but we're seeing all these integrate and communicate with each other much smoothly, and also the development of ways to monitor them in masses. Whereas, like,
you've got integrated systems now that can integrate these different types of systems and be able to self-manage it in one kind of unified place versus I got to log in here, check this. I got to log in here, check this. Now they can, there's technology out there where you can integrate it all and you can manage it all. They have custom rules set up. And I mean, again, we're talking about like smart locks, lights, automated lights. So you can set that up the same way with all the lights in a house. You're like, hey, if you don't detect motion within 2 hours or something like that, or you can even integrate it with your PMS system. If there's no guest here, you can set like those kind of custom rules. If no guest is here and no motion is detected for this amount of time, turn out all lights, turn off AC, whatever you want to do. And you can save a ton of energy cost at the end of the day. What else is there? There's like, I think we're talking about, this is kind of new, someone with a septic tank. Whereas like a septic tank, it's like every 6 months to a year or whatever, you got to get cleaned out. There's now sensors there that will sense and detect when you need to have it cleaned out versus waiting until you got a backup,
And it's not necessarily like the tech didn't exist. The issue was the technology to monitor it and control essentially remotely, and then, like you said, integrate it with everything else that you have going on, and potentially across multiple properties at once. Um, I think a big one that we're really going to see kick off is related to the climate and temperature of properties, whether it be in areas where you manage pool heaters or just in areas that require a lot of AC or heat. The ability to program, not from in the home but outside of the home, the ability to have your thermostat turn on at a designated time prior to a checkout based on that check-in information, and then to have that thermostat reset itself based on that checkout information is going to be huge, especially as you start to see more and more discussion about green and sustainable investments. With a lot of the introduction of the green badges or sustainability through Booking.com or Airbnb, whether it be solar, EV chargers, just a sustainable home. A lot of these technologies, now that they've caught up, are going to play a huge role in helping some of these vacation rentals be more of a sustainable green investment, which, depending on who you listen to, is becoming a big consumer concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Should I get solar panels?
Depending on where you are, it seems extremely attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with the smart thermostats, I mean, even the schedulability has been around for a while, but it's like now there's the ability to integrate that with your guest booking system. Because again, before you could set standard rules like, hey, from these time frames or on these days, turn off or turn on. But a lot of that is kind of regulated by when a guest is coming in and coming out, and when they're checking in, checking out, and unless that's integrated with the actual booking platform or system that you're using for your reservations. Right, there's a plane passing over. It's almost going to be irrelevant. I mean, we've had owners with that technology with like smart thermostats in the past, and the guest is like, "Hey, it's too cold," and we go in, we look at the custom rule, and it's like, "Oh, it was set up to go off at these times if there was no motion, but the guest is still cold, so the heat's cutting off." But now it's just becoming a lot more refined. Like you said, it's just integrating with the particular systems, and it's just getting a lot better. What are some other technologies that are being applied to the industry? I mean, AI is definitely AI and smart learning tools are definitely being used all over the place. I'm seeing now. I mean, I know we're using it for our revenue management. We're using it for collecting guest data, for compiling automated message responses. I see it all over the place, but it's, again, that's a very brand new industry, or brand new technology. So I'll be excited to see how that kind of adapts and evolves.
Right now, it's primarily not guest facing. There's
Right.
not a lot of interaction, but I would say the AI to guest communication. Let's say you were in favor of that. Like, okay, hey, guest communications may start interacting on some level with AI as opposed to human, which we could debate that all day long. But let's say it does go that route, because right now AI is not really guest facing. I'm kind of the impression that guest facing AI is kind of where some of the other technology we talked about was 2 years ago. We're like, hey, there's a lot of applicable places here. You're already seeing it: revenue management, creative copyright, data collection, etc. But within the next couple of years, maybe 1 to 2 years, with how quickly things are moving these days, you may start to see a little bit more of AI focused to the guest. One of the interesting things is, as you use AI to look at guest and owner inquiries and questions, you can filter out a lot of those questions to basically very straightforward, generic, hey, can you just help me with this? Or very easy questions. And there may be something to be said about being able to deal with the routine very straightforward, off the cuff questions that an owner or a guest may have day in, day out. And then your human resources are reserved for really getting in there, helping with more difficult challenges, questions, and really capitalizing on the hospitality aspect. Um, Maybe that's a little altruistic way of thinking on how we're going to use AI to help guests, but I do think maybe we're a year or two behind. But the reason at the beginning of the podcast, I said I think a lot of the changes are around that guest booking experience is because you're definitely seeing a lot of AI come into play around that area of the industry. Which kind of just spins off into somewhat tech related, but the ability to provide guest upsells to your guest. So you can use technology to provide additional services to your guest, whether that be a concierge service, an experience, um, a refrigerator stock, a golf outing, whatever that may be. You're already starting to see some of those technologies come into play, whether it's just a chat bot.
Yeah, you're seeing a ton of industry businesses and companies starting to as basically support functions of this industry or additional add-ons to short-term rentals. Yeah, there's like that. There's Baby Quip, which they deliver baby products back in place, things like that. What else is there? Yeah, like you said, the like Concierge, where they're providing additional booking reservations for dinner or kind of experiences. What else is there? There's a ton of those.
Yeah,
They're all over the
well,
place.
again, just kind of on the general topic of the discussion, 2 years ago, in the majority of your markets, a concierge service or any type of experience service was either new or novel, a new or novel idea. And you fast forward now to today, and it is almost a staple of most professional property management companies in some capacity. Um, some may do it in house, some may outsource it, some may do it to varying degrees or limited services. But it all falls right lock and step with the maturation of this industry. Um, I also think technology is going to be very important here because as we see margin compressions, both on the sides of the property management groups and just kind of in nightly rate a little bit with supply of vacation rentals slightly exceeding the demand for vacation rentals, owners, property managers, operators are going to need to become more familiar and creative with ways of generating additional revenue sources off of those properties so that their management fee can be competitive in the market. And one way of doing that potentially is offering auxiliary services that you're maybe using technology to offer automated emails, AI recognizing certain guest words and cues, whatever that may be. But I think there's a scramble for a lot of software providers to offer the best service in that area and integrate with the the majority of your well-known PMS systems, Streamline,
Right.
Guesty, whatever it may be. Yeah,
So just a first.
and even and Airbnb directly, as a matter of fact.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they just released their experiences function just in 2020, which I
Yes.
think they quickly pulled it back during the pandemic. But yeah, that's still brand new. So yeah, further expanding on elevated guest experiences, additional add-ons for that. Yeah, for that guest stay, and companies evolved around that. I mean, even what's the now you can just get things shipped to houses. What's the heck's it? What's that system called? Or what's that company called where you can just ship something?
Are you talking about like the app, like an Instacart?
Instacart, yeah, yeah.
Well,
There's
yeah.
even like Instacart, which I mean that's
Well, that's
fairly
that's actually just another great example of a technology that existed out there that is almost been reverse engineered into short-term rentals and a lot of different things. But then off of that, you see companies specifically focus on that area of hospitality. The additional requests, the drop offs of certain things, the pre-stocked refrigerator, the wine, etc. Just as you saw, baby rental equipment companies spin off of the industry. So
With all these changes, with the market compression, I mean, is it still worth it to buy a short-term rental as an investment property?
absolutely. Now that's absolutely just a super broad statement. Where are you looking? What's your budget? What's your mindset going into it? What are your long-term goals with this property? Uh, what type of access and availability do you want to the property? So it's kind of a blanket yes, but it just comes down to the right property, um, and going into it with a we just got this is just got we had this has got to be serious. You can't just take your property that you're not sure what to do with and do vacation rentals anymore.
And expect great performance or great return.
And yeah,
Yeah,
which,
not
which
every home is a short-term rental. And now there's regulatory bodies that may prevent that. Your home may not even apply for a short-term rental permit or whatever your city's permitting is. It may not even qualify for that. And also, it's based on kind of the overall location. Are guests actually going to be traveling to this area to your home? Is there a high demand for that? And not every home is a short-term rental, and that's fine. But overall, you'd say it's still a good investment in general, barring those things apply or you actually qualify for those things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that now I'm a little bit of speculation here, but vacation rentals do have a fairly high operating cost compared to a long-term rental. You got the internet, you have your trash services, you have your lawn care, you potentially have pool care, you potentially have snow removal, you name it, it's all in there. You have a lot of cash flow being produced off of these properties. When you have that type of cash flow coming off of a rental property, you have a much easier time servicing your debt. And if you're able to effectively service your debt to hold and maintain in good condition a valuable asset, I think you're doing phenomenally well. To add on top of that, you now have an asset that's being very well taken care of with a lot of attention that you and your family and your friends have access to occasionally. So there's some intrinsic value of having a short-term rental, some extrinsic value. Of course, there's some monetary value of having a short-term rental. But you got to come into this more seriously than we have in the past. And it's got to be with a professional investment hospitality mindset from square one. But absolutely, a vacation rental with the right partner, I think you're going to be very happy.
So, so do you still feel like the kind of 8 to 15 hour rule as it still stands as far as how much time like an individual host would spend managing their home week to week?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that number is trending up, especially in that first year of management, because as more technology and services are offered out there in the market and the industry free to use, that also comes with a greater learning curve, a larger time investment up front to use these tools. And anyone who's dove into these tools knows that you're probably not competent in them for like 6 months. You know, I've been working with some of these softwares for 5 years now, and I still jump on their free webinars that they host that are really set up for new users looking to learn about their service. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if that number in the first year has gone up, and then maybe after that first year, if you're not burnt out, then maybe that would go down because you've smoothed out some of your processes. But again, in the meantime, you have you can't really just isolate yourself to Airbnb anymore. You can't just really isolate yourself to one booking platform, and you would absolutely be shooting yourself in the foot if you listen to any of these booking platforms' pricing suggestions. So you got to go learn the industry, and that's going to be a time consumption. So
So if I have an investment property and I don't have time, let's say I'm out of state, um, and I have some family there, should I let my family manage the property? What are my options?
hey, to each his own. Personally, I can rattle off at least three situations where we took the home over from management where a family member was managing the property. There are so many friction points in this industry and so many variables to have to control, and also variables you can't control, that I've seen it put a lot of a stress on family. Um, I've seen situations where a family has decided to get together and hold on to a family home. And the way they're going to do that is to use it as a vacation, turn into a vacation rental so that they can also come use the home occasionally,
Right.
as opposed to like selling or just filling with a long term rental. And the stress and complications it adds on that family deteriorates the joy of having that property. So I would say, just as I would recommend,
You can say it. Just yeah, you can say it.
yeah, set expectations. It's probably not a good idea, but if you properly set expectations up front, maybe it works for you. Um, but there's professionals out there in this industry who spend many, many hours a day making sure that you don't have to do that and your guest and your property is well taken care of. So,
Well said. Yeah. So if I have an investment property, don't utilize family. Determine if I have at least 18, 15 hours a week to spend on this, and also a considerable amount of time to learn the industry and all the nuances, and all the automations, aka complexities, because that's what they are. A lot of it's just more complexity, to provide a heightened experience for guests. Otherwise, seek a professional management company that does this.
and sorry to add this last thing on there. Most of these technologies available to folks to use, the the cost versus return of using the softwares on just one or two property is doesn't always work out in your favor. And so if you're an individual managing your own personal property, um, and you don't have the ability to use all these technologies because the cost isn't worth it for one property, I would definitely look at a property management group.
Yeah, because they're getting bulk discounts on
Bulk discounts.
all these softwares. Yeah, they're paying wholesale prices. Gotcha. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah, we can kind of wrap it up there. I think we may need to do a part two because there were a lot of different topics I think we had on the agenda to discuss. So maybe we can do a part two, and kind of start where we left off. Kind of get in more to where the industry's going. But yeah, we'll call it quits. We'll call it
Wonderful.
quits there. But yeah, thanks for coming on. It was great having a conversation with you today.
Absolutely. See you at the VRMA.
See you at the VRMA, man.